My grandpa once said the lake could whisper secrets if you listened hard enough. I never believed him until the day it screamed betrayal. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth that summer evening when I found the letter nailed to the oak tree by the dock. The Homeowners Association, with their pressed suits and smug smiles, had declared Grandpa's lakefront property the heart of our family for 3 generations, improperly zoned. They wanted it gone, bulldozed for their cookie-cutter condos, and they thought a few legal threats would scare us off. They didn't know I held a secret weapon, a brittle, yellowed land grant from 1892, tucked away in a tin box under Grandpa's floorboards, proving this land was ours by right, not just memory. I'm Lila Mason, 28, a small-town librarian with no patience for bullies in blazers. Grandpa Joe, 82, was my rock, the man who taught me to fish, to fight, and to never back down when the world tried to take what's yours. That lake, shimmering under the Minnesota stars, wasn't just land, it was where he proposed to Grandma, where Mom learned to swim, where I scattered Dad's ashes after the accident. It was ours, and the HOA's sudden claim felt like a knife to the gut. The trouble started 6 months ago when Karen Whitmore, the HOA's president, rolled into town. Karen, with her peroxide blonde bob and a smile sharp enough to cut glass, had a reputation for getting what she wanted. She'd turned our quiet community of Pine Hollow into her personal fiefdom, enforcing rules nobody asked for: no wildflower gardens, no boats without permits, no unsightly mailboxes. But Grandpa's property? That was her white whale. 50 acres of pristine lakefront, untouched by her manicured vision of suburbia. She wanted it for her developer friends, who saw dollar signs in every ripple of the water. Lila, they can't do this, Grandpa said that night, his voice trembling as he sat in his old rocking chair, the letter crumpled in his gnarled hands. His eyes, usually bright with mischief, were clouded with fear. This land's been Mason land since my great-granddaddy. They can't just take it. I knelt beside him, my heart pounding. They won't, Grandpa. I promise. But inside, I was terrified. The HOA had lawyers, money, and a knack for bending the law. We had memories and a stubborn streak. Then I remembered the tin box. It was buried under the floorboards in Grandpa's bedroom, a relic from his childhood. He'd shown it to me once, years ago, laughing about how his father hid it during Prohibition to keep treasures safe. I pried up the board, my fingers shaking, and there it was, a tin box rusted at the edges, heavy with history. Inside, among old photos and a tarnished pocket watch, was the land grant. Signed by a governor, sealed with wax, it declared the lake and its surrounding acres the property of Ezekiel Mason, my great-grandfather's grandfather, granted for his service in the Civil War. It was ironclad, or so I hoped. The next morning, I marched to the HOA's office in town, the document in a plastic sleeve to protect it from my sweaty palms. Karen was there, perched behind a glass desk, her nails clicking on a keyboard. "Miss Mason," she said, not looking up, "I assume you're here to discuss the zoning issue." "No," I said, slamming the land grant on her desk. "I'm here to tell you to back off. This proves the lake is ours, free and clear, since 1892. Her eyes flicked to the paper, and for a split second, her mask slipped surprise, maybe even fear. Then the smile returned. "Oh, Lila, you're adorable. A piece of paper from the Stone Age. That won't hold up in court. Our attorneys have already filed for eminent domain. Progress, darling." I wanted to scream, but I held it together. "You'll see this in court, Karen. And you'll lose." The fight was on. Over the next weeks, Pine Hollow turned into a battleground. The HOA spread lies, claiming Grandpa's property was a public nuisance, that his old cabin was a fire hazard. Neighbors we'd known for years started avoiding us, afraid to cross Karen's clique. But others rallied old-timers who remembered fishing with Grandpa, kids who'd grown up swimming in the lake. They brought casseroles, offered to testify, even started a petition. It felt like a war, and I was ready to fight dirty. I hired a lawyer, Sarah Nguyen, a friend from high school who'd moved back to town after law school. She was fierce, with a knack for finding loopholes. "This grant is legit," she said, poring over the document in her cluttered office. "But the HOA's playing hardball. They've got the county commissioner in their pocket, and they're pushing for a quick seizure. We need to move fast." We filed a countersuit, claiming the land grant superseded any modern zoning laws. Sarah dug into county records, uncovering shady deals between the HOA and a developer called Pinnacle Properties. They'd been buying up lakefront lots for years, flipping them for millions. Grandpa's land was the last holdout, the crown jewel they couldn't touch unless they broke us. Karen didn't let up. She sent inspectors to harass Grandpa, citing violations, like his boat dock being 2 inches too wide. They slapped us with fines we couldn't pay, hoping to bleed us dry. One night, I caught a kid in a hoodie spray painting, "Sell or else," on our barn. I chased him off, but the message lingered like a bruise. Grandpa started fading. The stress was too much for his heart, already weakened by years of hard work. He'd sit by the lake for hours, staring at the water, whispering to it like it could talk back. "Lila," he said one evening, his voice barely audible, "if we lose this, I lose everything. This lake's all I've got left of her." He meant Grandma, gone 5 years now. I hugged him, promising we'd win, but doubt gnawed at me. Sarah found a break, a precedent from 1920 where a land grant held up against a city's expansion plan. It wasn't perfect, but it gave us a shot. We prepared for the hearing, gathering affidavits from neighbors, historical records, even a professor from the university who verified the grant's authenticity. The night before, I couldn't sleep, picturing Karen's smug face if she won. The hearing was chaos. The courtroom was packed. Half the town showed up, some cheering for us, others whispering about progress. Karen took the stand, spinning a tale about how the lakefront needed modernization for the community's good. She painted Grandpa as a stubborn old man clinging to a crumbling cabin, ignoring the greater good. I wanted to throw my shoe at her. When it was my turn, I held up the land grant, my voice shaking but loud. "This isn't just paper. It's my family's blood, sweat, and tears. It's where my grandpa taught me to live with honor. You don't get to erase that for condos." The room went quiet, and I saw a few people wipe their eyes. Sarah argued brilliantly, citing the precedent, the grant's legal weight, and the HOA's shady tactics. The judge, an older woman with a no-nonsense stare, listened intently. For a moment, I thought we had her. Then Pinnacle's lawyer stood, a slick city type named Greg Vance. He didn't attack the grant directly. Instead, he questioned its chain of custody, claiming it could be forged. Worse, he produced a new county survey, conveniently dated last month, showing the lake as public land. My stomach dropped. Sarah whispered, "They're faking it. I need time to prove it." But the judge set a deadline, 1 week to submit new evidence, or the HOA's claim would proceed. That night, I sat with Grandpa on the dock, the lake reflecting a crescent moon. "Lila," he said, his voice breaking, "I'm sorry I dragged you into this. Maybe I should have sold years ago." "No," I said, grabbing his hand. This is our home. We fight. The next day, Sarah and I went into overdrive. She tracked down the surveyor who'd supposedly drawn up the new map, a nervous guy named Tim who admitted, under pressure, that Pinnacle had paid him to adjust the records. It was a start, but we needed more. I started asking around town, chasing rumors about Pinnacle's deals. An old friend, Mike, who worked at the county clerk's office, slipped me a folder of emails between Karen and Pinnacle's CEO. They were damning proof they'd planned to seize the land long before that zoning excuse. With 2 days to spare, we submitted everything: Tim's confession, the emails, and a notarized copy of the land grant. I felt a flicker of hope, but Karen's confidence at the final hearing unnerved me. She sat there, cool as ice, while her lawyer spun a new story about clerical errors in the survey. The judge wasn't buying it, but she didn't rule yet. "I need time to review," she said, adjourning for a week. That week was hell. Grandpa's health worsened, he barely ate, and his cough turned into a rattle. I stayed up nights, watching him sleep, praying we'd win before he gave up. The lake seemed to hold its breath, too, its surface unnaturally still. When the ruling came, we were back in court, my heart in my throat. The judge's face gave nothing away. "After review," she said, "I find the Mason land grant legally binding. The HOA's claim is dismissed." The room erupted, cheers from our side, groans from Karen's. I hugged Grandpa, tears streaming down my face. We'd won. Or so I thought. The courtroom victory felt like a sunrise after a long, brutal night. I drove Grandpa home, his frail hand gripping mine, the lake sparkling like it was celebrating with us. But the joy was short-lived, like a firework that fades before you can savor it. Karen Whitmore wasn't the type to slink away defeated, and I should have known the HOA's claws were still sharp. The next morning, I woke to the sound of heavy machinery. From the cabin's porch, I saw bulldozers and construction trucks parked at the edge of our property, their engines growling like predators. Karen stood among them, clipboard in hand, her smile venomous. "What the hell is this?" I shouted, storming across the field, my boots sinking into the mud. "Lila, darling," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "the county approved our access road. It's public land, after all. Didn't your lawyer mention that?" She gestured to a strip of our eastern boundary, where surveyors were hammering stakes into the ground. My stomach churned. The judge's ruling protected the lake and cabin, but this access road cut through our pasture, a deliberate scar to remind us who held the real power. I called Sarah immediately. "They're exploiting a loophole," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "The county claims the road is for public benefit, linking their new development to the highway. It's technically outside the grant's boundaries." I could hear her flipping through papers. "We can fight it, but it'll take months. And money. Money we didn't have." The legal fees had already drained Grandpa's savings, and my librarian's salary barely covered groceries. I hung up, my hands shaking, and looked at Grandpa, who was watching the bulldozers from the porch. His face was gray, his shoulders slumped. "They're carving us up, Lila," he whispered. "Piece by piece." I wanted to scream, to grab a shovel and chase the workers off myself. Instead, I went back to the tin box, hoping for another miracle. There was no other documents, no hidden deeds. Just a photo of Grandma, smiling by the lake, her hair catching the sunlight. I clutched it, tears burning my eyes, and swore I wouldn't let Karen win. The next week was a blur of desperation. Sarah filed an injunction to halt the road, but the county dragged its feet, claiming procedural delays. Meanwhile, the construction crew worked dawn to dusk, their machines tearing up the earth. Neighbors stopped by, some with coffee and sympathy, others with warnings. "Karen's got the commissioner eating out of her hand," said Mrs. Larson, who ran the general store. "Rumor is, Pinnacle's funding his re-election." I started digging deeper, fueled by coffee and rage. Mike, my friend at the county clerk's office, was nervous but helpful. He slipped me more documents. Permits rushed through, environmental reports glossed over. The road wasn't just a jab at us, it was a test run for Pinnacle's bigger plan, a gated community that would swallow half the lakefront, including land adjacent to ours. If they succeeded, our victory in court would mean nothing. They'd choke us out, make the cabin unlivable, force us to sell. I confronted Karen at the next HOA meeting, held in the community center's stuffy basement. The room was packed with residents, some nodding along with her, others shifting uncomfortably. "You're destroying this town," I said, my voice echoing off the cinderblock walls. "That road violates every environmental regulation, and you know it. You can't just pave over our lives for profit." Karen didn't flinch. "Progress requires sacrifice, Lila. Your grandfather's land is a relic, holding back Pine Hollow's future. Be reasonable." The crowd murmured, split between her polished promises and my raw anger. I left feeling like I'd punched a brick wall. Grandpa's health was slipping faster now. His cough turned into pneumonia, and the doctor warned he needed rest, not stress. But how could I shield him when trucks rumbled past our windows daily? I started sleeping in the cabin's living room, waking at every noise, afraid of what Karen might try next. Then came the fire. It was 2 a.m. when the smoke woke me. I stumbled outside, coughing, to see flames licking the barn's roof. Grandpa was already on the porch, leaning on his cane, his eyes wide with horror. "Lila, get the hose," he shouted, but the fire was too fierce, fed by dry hay and old wood. By the time the volunteer fire department arrived, the barn was gone, reduced to smoldering ash. The sheriff, a tired man named Bill, ruled it accidental, but I saw the smirk on one of the construction workers' faces the next day. Arson. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. Grandpa didn't speak for days after that. He'd built that barn with his father, stored his fishing gear there, kept Grandma's old rocking horse for the grandkids we never had. Losing it was like losing her all over again. I found him one night by the lake, staring at the water, a bottle of whiskey in his hand, something he hadn't touched since Grandma died. "I failed her, Lila," he said, his voice breaking. "I promised to keep this place safe." "You didn't fail," I said, kneeling beside him. "We're still here. We're still fighting." But my words felt hollow. The HOA was winning, grinding us down with every dirty trick. Sarah called with a glimmer of hope. An environmental group, Lake Guardians, had caught wind of the road project. They suspected Pinnacle had faked their impact study, ignoring protected wetlands near our property. "If we can prove they violated federal law, we can stop the road," Sarah said. "But we need hard evidence, samples, photos, expert testimony." I threw myself into it, spending days wading through the marshes with a volunteer from Lake Guardians, a biologist named Rachel. She was sharp, passionate, and hated Pinnacle as much as I did. We found proof: rare plants crushed by bulldozers, water samples showing runoff from their construction site. Rachel's team filed a federal complaint, and for the first time, I saw Karen sweat. She cornered me outside the post office, her face tight with rage. You're making a mistake, Lila. Drop this, or you'll regret it. Threaten me again, I said, stepping closer, and I'll make sure everyone knows what you're doing. She backed off, but her eyes promised trouble. The complaint slowed the roadwork, but it didn't stop it. Pinnacle's lawyers were too good, burying the case in red tape. Meanwhile, Grandpa's condition worsened. He was in and out of the hospital, his heart struggling under the weight of it all. I started to wonder if we could whine her if the cost was too high. Then Mike called, his voice low and urgent. Lila, I found something. Meet me at the diner, midnight. I drove through the dark, my hands gripping the wheel, expecting another bombshell. Mike slid into the booth, looking over his shoulder like a hunted man. He pushed a USB drive across the table. Emails, he whispered. Between Karen, Pinnacle, and the commissioner. They're planning to rezone the entire lakefront, not just your land. They bribed officials, faked documents, everything. I stared at the drive, my heart racing. This was its smoking gun. Why are you risking this, Mike? I asked. He shrugged, his face pale. I grew up swimming in that lake. It's not right, what they're doing. Back home, I plugged in the drive. The emails were worse than I imagined, Karen promising Pinnacle a clear path to our land, the commissioner agreeing to expedite permits for cash, even plans to intimidate other holdout property owners. It was a conspiracy, plain and simple. Sarah nearly cried when I showed her. This could take them down, she said. But we need to be careful. They'll come after you. She was right. The next day, my car's tires were slashed. A rock came through the cabin's window with a note, last warning. I didn't tell Grandpa it was too weak, but I started carrying a pocket knife, checking the locks every night. Fear was a constant companion now, but so was fury. We filed the evidence with the federal court, and the case exploded. Local news picked it up, then state, then national. Small-town family fights corrupt HOA, screamed the headlines. Protesters showed up at Pinnacle's offices, and Karen's perfect facade cracked. She went on TV, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, but nobody bought it. The commissioner resigned, and Pinnacle's stock tanked. But victory wasn't sweet yet. Grandpa was fading fast. I sat by his hospital bed, holding his hand, telling him we were winning. He smiled weakly. You're a fighter, Lila. Like your grandma. That night, he slipped into a coma. The final hearing came a week later. Sarah presented the emails, the environmental evidence, everything. Karen didn't show rumor was she'd left town. Pinnacle's lawyers tried to spin it, but the judge, the same no-nonsense woman from before, shut them down. This court will not tolerate corruption, she said. The road project was halted, the rezoning plan scrapped, and Pinnacle faced federal charges. I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was empty. I drove to the hospital, the lake glinting in the distance, and found Grandpa's room quiet. Too quiet. The doctor met me at the door, his face grim. I'm sorry, Lila. He passed an hour ago. I collapsed, sobbing, the land grant still in my bag. We'd saved the lake, but I'd lost him. The man who'd taught me everything, who'd fought beside me, was gone. The lake whispered secrets that night, just like he said, but all I heard was silence. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret. I sat by Grandpa's empty bed, the land grant crumpled in my fist, its edges worn from weeks of clutching it like a lifeline. We'd won the war, but the cost was a wound that wouldn't heal. The lake was safe, Pinnacle was crumbling, and Karen was gone, fled to some city where her smile might still open doors. But Grandpa, my anchor, was gone too, and the victory tasted like ash. I drove back to the cabin at dawn, the lake mirroring a sky bruised purple and orange. The bulldozers were silent now, their tracks scarring the pasture like a taunt. I walked to the dock, the photo of Grandma tucked in my pocket, and sat where Grandpa used to, letting the water lap at my boots. I wanted to scream, to curse Karen, Pinnacle, the whole damn world for taking him. Instead, I whispered, I kept my promise, Grandpa. It's still ours. But the lake didn't answer. The next days were a fog of grief. Neighbors brought casseroles, their faces heavy with pity, but I could barely eat. Sarah handled the legal wrap-up. Pinnacle faced fines, their CEO was indicted, and the county commissioner's resignation sparked an investigation. Pine Hollow buzzed with gossip, calling it the biggest scandal in decades. I didn't care. Without Grandpa, the cabin felt like a shell, its walls echoing with memories I couldn't face. Then the letter arrived. It was slipped under the door, no stamp, no return address, just my name in sharp, angry handwriting. Inside was a single page, typed, and signed, "You think you won, but you're alone now. Sell, or it gets worse." My blood ran cold. Karen was gone, Pinnacle was gutted. Who was this? I called Sarah, who told me to take it to Sheriff Bill. He frowned, scratching his beard. Could be a prank, Lila. Kids, maybe. But I'll keep an eye out. His tone said he didn't believe it, but the threat lingered like damp rot. I started noticing things. Footprints in the mud near the cabin, too big for kids. A light flickering in the woods at night, gone when I stepped outside. My car's gas cap was loose, the tank siphoned half empty. Someone was watching, waiting. I bought a cheap security camera, set it up by the porch, but it caught nothing, just owls and wind. Fear crept into my bones, but I refused to run. This was Mason land. I'd die before I let it go. Sarah urged me to sell. You've won, Lila. The land's safe. You could start over, somewhere without all this baggage. She meant well, but the idea felt like betrayal. Selling meant erasing Grandpa, Grandma, Dad, everything that made me who I was. I shook my head. This is home. I'm not leaving. But home was changing. The town, once split, now looked at me differently. Some saw me as a hero, the girl who took down the HOA. Others, the ones who bought into Karen's promises of progress, whispered I'd ruined their chance at new jobs, new homes. At the diner, Mrs. Larson told me Pinnacle had planned a community center, a school, things Pine Hollow needed. You did right by your grandpa, she said, but some folks think you cost them a future. Her words stung, but I couldn't argue. The lake was mine, but at what price? Then Mike disappeared. I tried calling him to thank him for the USB drive, but his phone was disconnected. I drove to his apartment, a cramped unit above the hardware store. His landlord said he'd left in the middle of the night, no forwarding address. Seemed scared, the old man muttered. My gut twisted. Mike had risked everything to help me. Had someone gotten to him? I went back to the USB drive, scouring the emails for clues. One stood out, buried in a thread between Karen and an unnamed contact. If the Masons don't fold, we move to Plan B, leverage the insider. Insider? My mind raced. Someone in Pine Hollow had been feeding Pinnacle information, someone close enough to know our moves. I thought of the neighbors who'd turned cold, the ones who'd stopped coming by. But who? Rachel from Lake Guardians called with news. "We're pushing for a federal injunction to protect the wetlands permanently," she said. "But we need you to testify again. Your name carries weight now." I agreed, though the thought of another courtroom made my skin crawl. I drove to her office in the city, the land grant in my bag like a talisman. On the way, I noticed a black SUV tailing me, keeping just far enough back to seem innocent. When I pulled into a gas station, it vanished. Paranoia, I told myself, but my hands shook as I filled the tank. The testimony went smoothly, Rachel's team armed with data that made the feds take notice. The wetlands were declared protected, a final nail in Pinnacle's coffin. I should have felt relief, but the SUV was back on my drive home, closer this time. I floored it, taking back roads, losing them in the twists of Pine Hollow's forests. When I got to the cabin, I locked every door, my heart pounding. The threat wasn't over. That night, the camera caught something. A figure, hooded, slipping through the trees near the lake. I froze, watching the grainy footage, my breath shallow. They didn't approach the cabin, just stood there, staring, then melted into the dark. I called Sheriff Bill, who sighed. "Lila, you're grieving. Stress does things." "I'll patrol," but he trailed off, unconvinced. I wasn't. Someone wanted me scared, and they were succeeding. The next blow came from an unexpected place. Mrs. Larson, of all people, came to the cabin, her face tight with guilt. "Lila, I need to tell you something." She sat at the kitchen table, twisting her hands. I told Karen about the land grant. Before the hearing. I didn't think she'd use it against you. She offered me money, said it'd help the store. My jaw dropped. Mrs. Larson, who'd known me since I was a kid, who'd brought us soup when Grandma died, had betrayed us. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears in her eyes. I thought it was harmless. I wanted to scream, to throw her out, but I saw the shame in her face. She'd been desperate, her store struggling. Karen had preyed on that. "Get out," I said, my voice flat. She left, sobbing, and I sat alone, the weight of betrayal crushing me. The insider wasn't some faceless villain, it was someone I'd trusted. I started questioning everyone. Neighbors, friends, even Sarah. Was she too quick to push for a settlement? Had Mike really left town, or was he silenced? The paranoia was eating me alive, but I couldn't stop. I dug through Grandpa's things, hoping for answers, and found a journal he'd kept during the fight. His shaky handwriting detailed late-night calls from an unknown number, someone warning him to back off. He'd never told me, probably to protect me. One entry chilled me: "If I'm gone, Lila, don't trust anyone. The lake's worth more than they're saying." What did that mean? I researched the land, diving into county records, geological surveys. A report from a decade ago mentioned rare minerals under the lake bed, valuable enough to attract corporate interest. Was that why Pinnacle fought so hard? Not just condos, but a mining operation. I called Rachel, who confirmed it. "There's talk of lithium deposits," she said. "Big money. They'd need your land to access it." The pieces clicked. Karen, Pinnacle, the threats, it was never just about a road or condos. They wanted the lake itself, its hidden wealth. Grandpa knew, or suspected, and it killed him. I felt sick, but also resolute. I'd expose them, no matter the cost. I reached out to a journalist, Emma, who'd covered the Pinnacle scandal. She met me at a coffee shop, her eyes sharp with interest. I gave her everything: Grandpa's journal, the mineral report, the threatening letter. "This is huge," she said. "But you're in danger. These people don't play nice." I nodded, already knowing. The black SUV, the hooded figure, they weren't random. Emma's article hit like a bomb. Corruption and greed, the fight for Pine Hollow's hidden wealth, ran in every major outlet. Protesters swarmed Pinnacle's headquarters, and the feds opened a new investigation. But the threats escalated. My mailbox was stuffed with dead fish, a clear message. The camera caught two figures this time, tampering with my car. I didn't tell Sheriff Bill was useless now. Instead, I bought a gun, a small pistol I kept under my pillow, hating how it made me feel. The end came faster than I expected. Emma called, frantic. "Lila, they found Mike. He's alive, but he's in hiding. He says Pinnacle hired someone to scare you off, maybe worse." Before I could respond, the line went dead. That night, the cabin's power cut out. I grabbed the gun, my heart hammering, and peered through the window. Headlights flashed in the distance, then went dark. Footsteps crunched outside. I didn't wait. I ran to the lake, the land grant and journal stuffed in my jacket, and hid in the old boat shed. The footsteps got closer, then stopped. A voicemail, unfamiliar, muttered, "She's not here." Another answered, "Burn it anyway." My blood froze. I heard the crackle of fire, saw flames licking the cabin's porch. My home, Grandpa's home, was burning. I wanted to fight, to scream, but I was one against many. I slipped into the woods, tears streaming, and watched the cabin become an inferno. The land was safe, the lake protected, but everything else was gone. I fled to Sarah's house, shaking, and told her everything. She called the feds, who arrested 2 men Pinnacle contractors, hired to resolve the Mason problem. The investigation unraveled the rest. Pinnacle's CEO had ordered the arson, desperate to cover the mineral scheme. They faced prison, and the lake was declared a protected site, untouchable. But I was homeless, alone, the last Mason standing on a battlefield I'd barely survived. I moved to the city, renting a tiny apartment, the land grant locked in a safe. I visit the lake sometimes, standing where Grandpa did, listening to its whispers. It's still ours, but it's empty without him. The lake won. I lost everything else.